Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're in, whatever time zone you're in, a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Local time in the UK, just gone 8 p.m, and it is Friday evening. I'm joined by four friends on the Zoom call. Tonight's subject is ham radio wins, fails and faux pas, so we're going to be discussing some of the things that have gone well for us and perhaps a few of the things that haven't gone quite so well for us, maybe a few self-induced errors as well. Anything you want to hear us talk about in the chat, please comment in the live chat. We'll listen to your stories as well. And whilst we're waiting for the YouTube notifications to go out telling people we've gone live, you've just about got enough time to grab yourself a drink, sit back and relax as we discuss ham radio wins, fails and faux pas. Back in just a minute. And we are live. A very good evening, everybody. Just looking in the chat, we got Stu with us, we got David M, we got Aaron, and we got Jimbo, who seems to show up on every live stream. Evening, Jimbo. Good to see you. And Andy Cowley as well, the phantom of the live stream, as I call him. He shows up on every live stream, but nobody actually knows what he looks like. Okay, so those of you who are regulars to this live stream may notice we're a couple of people down today. We've unfortunately, Dave, Irish Ham Radio, isn't with us. He had a family commitment, so he had to drop out. We were hoping to get Mike with us today. He had a commitment he had to go to as well. So with that, let's just quickly, before we start, we'll do a quick run around the screen and introduce everybody. Quick 30-second intro for each channel, what we do, what we're all about. It's a nice little icebreaker just to get things started. So let's start with, on my top left, Chris, Digital Analog Cam. Evening, Chris. Oh, we can't hear you, Chris.
Yeah, sorry. Evening, James. Thank you for inviting me on.
Well, thank you for joining us. So give us a bit about your channel. You've been looking at a new radio, haven't you, recently?
Yes, I've been looking at the Hermes Light 2. It's an SDR transceiver, which is 5 watts, and I've been getting to grips with it. It's a wonderful receiver. I've got the 705 and the 7300, and it knocks them out the water. The audio on it, it's got, because it all goes through Windows, and you can remove all the noise. It's all about noise reduction. Yeah,
because it uses the same software as the Anon receivers, doesn't it? Which is real sort of top notch.
Yes, Thetis and Power SDR and all that sort of stuff. And I've had to, because it's 5 watts and I'm in a block of flats, it's led me down the route of linears, which I wouldn't normally do, but I've been enjoying playing with the Micro PA50 linear amplifier. It's only 50 watts. I mean, and
yeah, but you don't need a lot of power. I mean, when we're out portable running SOTA, we normally run about 10 watts, so you don't need a lot.
10 would be fine, but 5 is just in a compromised position. It makes things difficult. So I got that and an ATU, and that's what we talk about on my channel. Everything digital and analog. HF. I go out in the car. I do HF at home with the mag loop and.
Yeah, well, you've done very well with 50 watts from a mobile setup, haven't you?
Got Australia once on HF, yeah. Got America hundreds of times. I particularly like working FM on 10 meters when it's in and speaking to speaking on the New York repeater and all that cool stuff.
Okay, so let's move on round then. Let's go around to the other Chris. So M0RSF, tell us a little bit about your channel and
Good evening,
what you've been up
James.
to.
Thanks for the invite, as always. Good evening, everybody. My YouTube channel is my name and call sign, Chris, M0RSF. QRP and portable operating. All low power stuff. Quite a lot of VHF stuff, but there's more HF stuff appearing on there as well now. Plan to get out with the recently acquired KX2, which I've been after for some time. So looking forward to that. So yeah, that's it basically. Low power stuff.
Never got my hands on the KX2, but heard good things about it, and I know Fraser's got one as well. So they're meant to be really good radios.
Yeah, popular. Hard to get hold of with the component shortage, whatever's going on. Can take some time. Really like it. As rugged as the 817, I wouldn't say so, but much lighter because I tend to operate with sealed lead acid batteries with the 817. Big heavy things, 2.1 amp hour. So the rucksack's quite heavy. So the KX2 with the internal battery and the ATU weighs very little. So
it's down to what you want, isn't it? I mean, it's probably more rugged than the 705, but I absolutely love my 705.
I've never had my 705 out of the shack, James. It's my main shack radio.
You use that as your main shack, don't you?
Yeah, it's the main shack radio. I love it to bits. 10 metres recently, Ecuador and Dominican Republic on 10 metre SSB, that were on 10 watts.
Well, that's another band I want to play with, and I notice other Chris on the top left of the screen is showing us a picture of it as we speak. He's very well organised, much more organised than I am. Around to Fraser, give us a quick rundown of your channel.
Yeah, good evening, James. Good evening, everyone. My channel is The Radio Rover, and I started it by accident because I've down through the ages of filmed stuff with camcorders and various things, and when I started doing SOTA, which was probably my return to the hobby after being dormant for a while due to several house moves, I took a little GoPro. Actually, there it is. That's the little Hero, which was the only camera I had with me on a couple of hikes, and uploaded a couple of videos, and it started from there. And I suddenly realised that hiking in Scotland with one of these in the winter isn't the greatest idea because the battery just dies in the cold. I guess it's got quite a small battery, and it picks up a lot of wind noise as well. So a year or so later, I upgraded to the Hero 9, which has got a media kit on it, and this microphone does a cracking job of keeping the wind noise down. And it's also got a really fancy lens. It almost acts like kind of like a steady cam. So if you're walking and running, it really stabilizes the picture. So all my videos are pretty much outdoors. Occasionally I'll do something sort of semi-technical if somebody asks me about, chokes or antenna design or something like that. You guys were talking about 10 meters. I got into 10 meters probably before the band was open and built myself a quarter wave vertical last year with elevated radials, well 45-degree radials, just 3 of them. And as soon as 10 meters started working, I've been working all over the place with that. Worked in Argentina, States a few times. And in reality, when the band's open, you can work 10 meters with a random wire. But obviously, if you've got a tuned antenna, it does help. So yeah, I know a lot of the sort of guys, James, like yourself, tend to stick to 40 and 20, but it's worth sometimes.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that, I must admit.
Maybe start up at 10 sometime and see what turns up, because you might surprise yourself.
You tend to stick with what you know, don't you? You tend to go, well, 20 and 40's always worked for me. You've got the same old regular chasers keep coming back. So
I'll tell you
it's
one thing
force of habit.
While we're talking about that, if you put up an inverted V and end-fed half wave that will obviously do for 40, 20, 15 and 10, what I've started doing recently is starting on 10 meters. And if the chasers want you, they have to go up there. And I work my way down, because the problem is if you start on 40 and then do 20, by the time you get to 10, everybody's worked you and they've gone off to do something else. Yeah,
I've played that tactic a couple of times. It depends how long you're going to be up there as well. Quite a lot of the time I'm just looking for a quick activation. Aerial goes up 40, 20 and I'm out of there. Yeah. So I think it depends as well. But having said that, I had some good results on 21 megs on a few occasions. And on 18 as well. Can be a good band.
Yeah, it's working well.
But whilst we're talking with Fraser, the video I think that got me onto your channel quite a while back was you did activation with a ridiculously big torch, a nighttime activation, didn't you?
Yeah, well, that was
hilarious.
That was my only failure. So I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or later.
Yeah, go for it. Well,
Okay.
I was kind of playing that lead in, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, it was just along the road in Ballater, and a little one-point summit. And we talk about cities or towns with summits in them. Ballater's a little village, but it's got a hill inside the village, and it's a little craggy thing called Craig and Darragh. And I dropped my wife off one December night. She was having a meal with her work. And I thought, rather than drive 8 miles home and 8 miles back again, I'll go and activate Craig and Darragh, because I'd never done it. And I took this DeWalt, basically a sight light on a tripod, and it's got a big 18-volt drill battery in it. So I took that up the hill with me, set it up at the top. It was pitch black, and it really illuminated the scene. Certainly made it easier putting a mast up on a rocky summit in the dark, and then for video, and it was perfect. The only thing is I hadn't checked the solar conditions when I'd gone out, and there weren't actually any sunspots that day at all. And despite the fact I think there was a 40-metre or an 80-metre contest on that evening, I did not make one single contact. But my wife Mo was sitting down in the restaurant, and suddenly people in the restaurant started looking at their phones. And they're going, oh, she's like, what's going on? She goes, oh, there's something going on over on Craig and Darragh. I think there's a mountain rescue or something, like a helicopter up there, because this big massive light on the summit. So half the village was talking about what the hell that was on the top of Craig and Darragh. And Mo said to her friends, oh, no, that's okay. That's just my husband doing his summits on the air kind of thing. It's he's a bit of a nutcase. So
nothing wrong with being a bit of a nutcase.
It was a good laugh, and I did enjoy myself, but I did not make a single contact on the radio.
I'll tell you, I tried a nighttime SOTA activation once, and I really struggled. I struggled to get the 4 contacts, just about scraped through. So I think what happens is I notice if you activate sort of earlier in the day, sort of between, I normally aim for about 9, 10 o'clock to be on there. I find that a lot of the SOTA chasers tend to dry up by about 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It goes really quiet, so I find evening activations a real struggle. But yeah. I'll tell you my summit failure. I went up Fan Ned. It was quite early on. I think it was before I started the YouTube channel, actually, and I got myself set up. I went for a VHF activation, got the antenna up, just called CQ, big pile-up came back. And as I said that, the mast fell down. It just missed my head and landed beside me on the floor. So I got this big pile-up call. I could still hear people calling as the mast was laying on the floor. I was like, hang on a sec, hang on, I'm trying to get the mast up, you know. So I had to just say, hold on, let's stop the pile-up, pull the mast up. So that was a little bit of embarrassment. And talking about faux pas, we were looking at the number of people waiting before we went live, and we were saying we're going to be talking to ourselves, but I'm looking at the comments now, and we've actually got quite a nice number of people watching. So who have we got? We've Simbo2K, 2E0VOE evening, Radio DX is there, we got Steve M1SDH, who else we got? AMC Radio Club. Where's anyone know where that is?
Which one?
That is I believe that I'm in that club. That's an online amateur radio club.
Oh, okay. I must admit, it's not one I've heard of before. But
look on you can find it on Discord. It's an online ham radio club. They've got last look, they had about 80, 90 members.
We've got LZ4DJ on from Bulgaria.
Nice. Amateur Radio UK has gone international. And Jason 2E1HKO, I recognise that call sign. I can't put a face with the name, I'm afraid, but I do recognise that call sign. Got Chris and Steve. What's Steve say down here? Finally sorting myself out for a portable HF setup. Looking forward to trying out my first POTA. So hopefully some of the mistakes we've made over the years you might learn from today. Chris, you've done a RSF, you've done a few SOTAs, haven't you? Have you had any disasters on summits?
How long have you got? Yeah, I've had one or two. Good evening,
About an hour.
Simeon. Yeah, good evening to Simeon 2E0VOE. Lives a couple of miles that way from me. He's been to this QTH and we met for breakfast, him and his Mrs. Pam, a couple of weeks ago. Enjoys his hobby, so good evening to Simeon. The main one that stands out, and it still annoys me to this day, is, you know, I run the ASO FT817. I used to run it with the internal battery, which was 1400 milliamp hour. And I wanted something better. I had some AA batteries recommended to me, some nickel metal hydride, 2,900 amp hour. I thought, right, that'll do it. Go in the bottom of the 817. I tried them on several activations, absolutely fine. Got the proper charger for them, where the 8 of them sit in it, and it tells you when each individual battery's charged. So I put the batteries on charge overnight, and I went to bed. I got up the next day, all the batteries fully charged. Take them with me, off I go from where I live in Leeds in Yorkshire down to Shining Tor, which I think you know well, James.
Yeah, I've had a couple of disasters up there, yep.
90 mile one way, that for me from here. So it gets to Shining Tor and we climbs the hill and we get set up and I turn on the 817 and it immediately switched straight back off again. I thought, that's not good. So I turn on the 817 again and it turned back off again. The cold had killed the batteries. Killed the batteries dead. So I had another operator with me, Rico G6RFL, who lent me a Beoff thing handheld. So I thought, right, okay, it's a good takeoff from Shining Tor. You've had some good cues. I thought, I'll qualify it with this. I don't know if anybody knows about anything called a bricked Beoff thing. Basically, the deaf. You do something to and it's deaf. So I'm calling CQ. Nobody came back to me. So I've done a 180-mile round trip for nothing. And I got home to several emails to say that people could hear me, but I couldn't hear them. And I've not been back to Shining Tor since. So that's why it annoys me.
I'll tell you my disaster when I went up there. I went up with the intention of doing it on VHF. So I took the mast up there with me. Yeah, the big heavy mast, not the lightweight one. And took the antenna up with me. You know, proper sized antenna went on top of the mast. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly. So took the Yaesu FT857 with me as well. So full power, big battery. Got up the top and realised I'd got the aerial, got the mast, got the radio, got the battery. I forgot the bloody coax cable.
Is that? Did you dash back to the car for that?
No, I took with me a really short coax piece, probably about that long, and I managed to, yeah, basically a patch lead, and I hooked that up to the. I had a 49-1 and a piece of wire, so I ended up recovering it on HF. So I suppose it wasn't a complete disaster, but
so you managed to qualify the summit.
Yeah, but it's just the fact that I went up there fully intending to go for it on 2 meters, and that was kind of like my main goal for that trip up there. I drove the big tank of a motorhome all the way up there and then found I couldn't do the one activation I really wanted to do. So
how far is that from your QTH, Shining Tor?
Mileage, I think it's about 4 hours, I think, in the car. 3 to 4 hours. About 100 miles or so, I think.
So it's about 90 from me.
Yeah.
I think
feel like an activation coming on sometime.
So I was going to say if Dave EI5IMB had been on tonight, I don't know if you remember one of his videos. He uses a linked dipole for most of his stuff, and he completely forgot to take his mast on one occasion, and he was on a summit, and he just draped the dipole over the trig point, and just went for it. I mean, the thing was about a meter off the ground, and I remember speaking to him offline. I said, you know, Dave, what was this SWR like on that? He went, oh, it was about 4-1, but I just kept going, and he was using that what's that Yaesu radio that's the sort of
891.
The 891. He uses the 891, and I was thinking, goodness, that must be some tough box if he's been, you know, reflect most of his power. And you know, Dave was never QRP until he's bought this new radios. He's probably like banging 50-60 watts through this thing. And most of it's coming back down the coax into the back end of his radio. But
it worked.
Yeah, it survived.
It worked. But then you think about it, on the SOTA Summit, I've heard people say before the real ground is actually a bit lower down.
Yeah,
if that makes
it could be
sense.
meters below. If it's shattered, like a shattered rock, I mean, it might look like a grassy surface, but a lot of soil on mountains is only, that thick, and it could be shattered rock beneath it. The true ground could be meters below that.
I can vouch for that when I've tried sticking the spike in the ground for the vertical.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
It proves the point that you can get away with so much by just putting an aerial up a, 4 or 5 meter mast and still make it work.
Well, it looks like we're not the only ones that have forgotten to take equipment for us. I'm just looking on the chat. We got Stu on the 145 Alive. He looks like he left his antenna behind. He got there and didn't even have the antenna with him. Had to do a 1.5 hour round trip to go and get it. He made it back just in time to go on air, so fair due. And of course, he drove within the speed limits, didn't he?
Class.
Chris, UKH, you're very quiet up the top left there. What have you got for us? Have you had any recent disasters?
No, but I did have a run-in with the police. Do you remember I told you on the phone?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We spoke about this, didn't we?
Yeah.
Briefly.
Well, it was, it's radio. It's radio related. It's how I started. It was on 11 meters, and I was out of work. I just had a really good job, and I was made redundant and had all the time in the world. I was 18, 19. I wasn't looking for a job. I was just enjoying, being a kid, going around in the car, doing 11 meters at the time. And I got stopped by the police. I had a Cobra 148 in the car and a Zatagi 400 linear, and they took the lot. Well, they stopped me and examined them and didn't know what they were. I was going to my girlfriend's house at the time, and they clocked what I'd got, and I got away with it. And the next day, I do the same route up there on, dropping her off, and they were waiting for me. No, well, they saw me again, but I removed the linears out the car. I removed the Zatagi, but I still had the Cobra 148, and they took it off me, and I had to go to court in Northampton. And I was lined up. Well, before me was a burglar. I was, luckily, because I was out of work, I was treated leniently. Do you know what I mean? I think it was about mid-80, late 87, something like that, 89. And I got £150 fine, and they took the radio off me. But I took the linear amplifier away after getting caught, and just left the radio in the car. And so I had to go to court, and the person before me was a burglar, and they were fined £80, and a good old honest radio operator, £150. So.
You do wonder with priorities sometimes, don't you? I guess if that happened now, I don't know how much Ofcom would actually do, to be honest. They don't seem to do an awful lot of policing these days, do they?
Well, they don't.
There's not a lot of police either to do a lot of policing. But that's a lot of money.
That's true.
Probably like 500 or 600 quid in today's money.
Yes, I suppose it is, yes. I mean, I'm just glad that I wasn't working, because I think they took that into account. But I'm not hurting anyone, burglars and thieves and that, they've got it all wrong, haven't they? Really.
Yeah, you have to have a bit of perspective on it, don't you? Well, as you know, I've got a linear amp down here on my desk, and I managed to melt my NFED half-wave transformer just out that window over there. It's set up. The transformer is, I think it's rated 150 watts, and I bought this linear, so I can run just short of about 250, 275 watts comes out of that when I crank it up. And I mainly chase SOTAs, so quick sort of 10, 20 second QSO and you're done. We all know what SOTA activations are, so it's never been a problem. But there was an 80 meter contest on one night. I thought I'll I'll just call CQ, see what happens. So, and I completely forgot this thing was only rated for 150 watts. So there's me sat there 80 meters, quite happily belting sort of almost 300 watts through this thing, and suddenly the SWR just goes through the roof, and the safety kicks in on the amp, and I'm thinking, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. So, yeah, I've actually melted a 49-to-1 transformer just outside that window. That was my faux pas. That's when I learned if you're going to put an amplifier in, you need to uprate everything else that goes with it: coax, transformers, balance, the full works. Make sure it can all cope with it.
Yeah, James, there's a couple of comments on about people leaving kit. G5 Stu said he was going to do FT8 portable with his DX Commander, and he forgot the USB cable. So that's an easy thing to miss, isn't it? I mean, when I first started doing SOTA, I was paranoid, and the way I worked out whether to take the right stuff was in my head. I started with the battery, the cable, the radio, and then went on to the feeder, and then the antenna, the master guys. So I had everything in the order of kind of path, I suppose, from the battery to the antenna. But now I've been doing it so long, I just chuck stuff in the bag, or the bag's just there, and I take it. And I've been caught out a few times. There was a couple of winters ago, there was a chance of a bit of tropo, so I wanted to take my FT857 and a Yagi up a hill near Braemar, and I'd emailed a few people. I mean, one of the main chasers, Don G0RQL, lives down in Devon, and I've reached him before on 2 meter sideband. So I was all geared up. I'd emailed him. He was ready for me, and Mo and I were going up this hill covered in snow, quite icy, and we got about a mile up it, and I realised that I'd left the battery back in the Land Rover. So that was the battery for the 857. So I said to her, you keep walking. So I went charging back down the hill to the car, picked up the battery, but then realised the battery just had this, I think this is an XT60 connector on it. It's the ones that come with them. And I've got a link that goes on to that takes it to, this one's got a power pole on it. And I've got another one that goes straight into the FT857. I couldn't find that anywhere. So all I had with me was the handheld, and but I still had this Yagi. So I ran back up to her, and we're walking up the hill, and I'm just thinking, I'm not going to make any contacts at all, because Braemar is in the middle of nowhere. It's surrounded by higher mountains on all three sides. And so we got up there, I hooked the Yagi up. I only had a short length of feeder, the one that's on the Yagi, so that the handheld was just hanging off the end of the mast, and I was holding this thing up. And somehow, now somebody that's a better radio engineer than me could probably tell me, but there was a hill to the south of me that was about 500 feet taller called Glass Mall, and it's a right dome of a summit. And the radio waves, I suspect, were actually refracting over the top of the summit and down the other side. And I got 4 or 5 contacts on 2 meters with people that were definitely not line of sight. So it ended up being an absolutely brilliant day, because it just kind of pulled out of the bag when I thought it was going to be a total disaster.
They're the best ones, though, aren't they? When you recover it.
Yeah.
I was looking at the comments here. So Chris said he managed to melt a new FT710 in the chat, put 24 volts through it, cost him £450. So he's got it back and fixed now. The one that stood out for me was Steve M1SDH. He said he was on a military range, and the warden came out. I wonder if that's down in Salisbury, because that's where I did our latest Three Nations Worldwide Flora Fauna event. And I saw the warden over there, because the warden parked up, came marching over to the car, and I thought, oh, he's going to shut me down here. And then I wound down the window, and he kind of stopped, paused, looked at me, and said, "You look familiar. Have you got a YouTube channel?" And it turns out he was Ham, so it might even be the same person that Steve met there. I'd be interested to... Oh, yeah, he says, yeah, Salisbury Plain, so it's probably the exact same location, to be fair. And, yeah, Chris says his radio needed a new motherboard and screen, so it sounded like he did quite a bit of damage there. That's always bad. So Chris must have been set up for military stuff, because I think a lot of the military stuff runs 24 volt, doesn't it? As opposed to our Ham stuff normally runs 12, 13 volts. So What else we got? I'll tell you, I've got a good one here where radio doesn't necessarily do what you expect. So I was out on a Raynet event. I belong to a Raynet group, and we were doing communications for this. I think it was a marathon event, and we'd worked it all out, done all the simulations on computer, and there was one checkpoint that was going to be a bit borderline, but we reckoned it should work, and we got there, and his signal was up and down all over the place. 1 minute he was S8, and the next minute he went down to S0, completely unworkable, and we thought, what's going on here? There's something really, really strange going on with it, because the adjacent stations could hear him constant signal, but control, he was up and down all over the place. There was something really odd going on, and we kind of battled with it for half the day. I think we put a relay in the end, because of course Raynet, you get a permit, you can put talk throughs in. But I was monitoring his input to the relay, thinking, what on earth's going on here? And I just happened to look up at the sky, and a couple of times as his signal came in, it was at regular intervals. It was roughly every 2 to 3 minutes. His signal would come up for about 30 seconds and then go down. And I just so happened to look up at the sky as his signal went up, and there was an aeroplane flying overhead. And as the aeroplane flew past, his signal dropped down again. And then next aeroplane came overhead, his signal came up and then plummeted again. And that's when we clocked it. We were directly under the flight path of Gatwick Airport.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
So,
it shows you what the aircraft scatter can do, though, even on, I assume that was 2 meters you were on, was it?
Yeah, 2 meters and 70 sems, but it was more noticeable on 2 meters, I would say. But
one of we use 81 megahertz for motorsport safety radio when I'm doing recovery at rallies, and you tend to have a radio controller sitting somewhere on a rally stage, and everyone that's out marshalling in the various points, you only ever talk through the controller, you never talk to one another. But you can often hear all the other stations around the stage as well. And we were over in the Isle of Mull one time, and there was really localised heavy showers happening. And you could actually hear the propagation change as the shower was moving around. And if you happened to be in the shower, as we were at one point, you couldn't hear anyone at all. It was just absolutely killing the radio signal, and that was just a bit of rain. It was just shows you how it works.
Yeah, it's surprising what propagation can do. It can catch you off guard, because we were all... we had like probably about 10, 15 of us on that event. We were, a lot of people with a lot of experience as well. And we were all completely baffled. We were just sat there scratching our heads. And it was only when I looked up and saw the aircraft flying overhead, I thought, I wonder. And then the next aircraft came along, same pattern. I thought, yeah, there's something in this.
So there's an idea then. So, I mean, there's that flight, is it called Flight Radar, the app that you can use that shows you where pretty much all the aircraft are in the sky at one time. So, there's like Chris down in Yorkshire and me up in Scotland. I wonder if it would be possible if we managed to get some planes going over to get a 2 meter QSO going.
Yeah.
Could be an interesting experiment. Yeah, I mean, this was quite a while ago. I think this before that was released. We didn't have that at the time. But
I live probably about 4 miles from Leeds Bradford Airport, line of sight, just over the hill, just opposite. And we get a lot of aircraft scatter, a lot of fluttery signals. Like I've heard soda summits that I don't normally hear, and they come up just for that second. You just can't quite get in.
You have to be quick, don't you?
Yeah, we need a flight that's from Manchester or Leeds to Aberdeen, Chris, and we kind of work out when it's halfway.
One of those C-120s, is that the big thing, the military thing?
That's what you need, something huge, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris is saying we get tractor scatter in the Dales. What other failures we had? 145 Alive for me. My 145 Alive failure. I went up there and I did 20 metres. It was also a worldwide flora fauna, so I went up there, did 20 metres worldwide flora fauna before doing the 145 Alive, and I've got a Ampro whip which I put on top of the mount on the motorhome. I took the motorhome up there, and the motorhome, the mount on the motorhome wasn't, should we say, quite as secure as I thought it was. I got up there, parked up, activated, and then I looked at the antenna. It was sort of over at like a 45-degree angle, and it had shaken itself loose where the whip was hitting all the trees on the overhead as I was driving down, and the whip had come loose. So I did basically 20-meter worldwide flora fauna activation with Ampro that wasn't properly connected to the motorhome.
So here's a question.
Go on.
Perhaps the viewers can join in as well. Us guys that do the source activations or the portable stuff, forgetting things. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I get my rucksack ready on the morning of the activation. I don't know if any of you guys get set the night before. I don't know. The first thing in my flask is 2 litres of tea. And then the radio. I get ready the morning after the activation. I don't know what the rest of you do. The viewers, maybe?
I'm a bit 50-50. I charge up all my batteries the night before and put all the radio equipment in there. But then just the odd extras like food, water, the mask, the stuff that straps on the side of the bag, I do in the morning before I go. But I normally leave fairly early in the morning anyway, sort of 5-6 o'clock. 2-hour drive over to Wales, and then hour climb. I'm trying to be on air by 9-10 o'clock. So I'm leaving the house by about 6 o'clock. So I don't want too much to do in the morning. So I get as much as I can ready the night before.
Does any of you guys have a go bag? For example, I've got 2 go bags by the door when I go out. I'm going work, and if I might want to do something afterwards. So I've got my Xiegu 6100 in one, with a battery and some aerials, or I've got my G90 in another one with a battery, and and I can go and find a fence somewhere and tune it up. Just projects I'm working on. A go bag that's got everything in, ready to whatever takes your fancy. How you feel in the morning as well.
Yeah, my KX2 lives in a little bag that's got a 41-foot random wire in it and some guys and bits and pieces. But I tend to have that standard kit I carry, and then on top of that, I'll potentially carry another antenna depending on what I'm doing, maybe a 10-meter one or an end-fed half-wave. Depends on what the band conditions are like, but that normally just sits all there ready to go with a battery inside it and a spare one charged up as well. But then you still got to remember to take your mast and, as Chris says, your tea, your sandwiches. I'm really bad for forgetting about my handheld, so suddenly realise at 10 o'clock at night, I'll put that on the charger and hope it's charged for the next morning.
I tend to swap and change my equipment around. Because I've got 3 main radios I use for SOTA, so I tend to swap and change between the radios. So I wouldn't say I have a go bag as such, because like I said, I'm always using different equipment, different antennas.
Just remind us what radios you take.
So the QRP ones, I've got an old ICOM 703, which is quite a nice radio, discontinued now, but I actually made a mistake with that. The original one I bought when I first got my M3 call sign, which was quite a long time ago, and I sold that, and I actually regretted that ever since. I went out and bought another one, so that one's staying with me now. I'm not making that mistake again. So yeah, ICOM 703. I've got an ICOM 705 and Yaesu FT857. Those are the 3 portable mobile radios I tend to take out with me. And
well, your newest one's the 705. Obviously that's miles ahead in terms of technology, but do you notice it on receive? The DSP and the filters. Do you notice it's miles ahead of the others?
Where it comes into its own is in noisy environments, especially at home. Like I've got a FTDX10 here at home, and where it's top of the you got that table of radio receivers. I can't remember what it's called now.
Sherwood.
That's it. Yeah, it's like second or third on the Sherwood list, and with the DSP noise reduction on that, you really notice it with the noisy environment here. But to answer your question, Chris, specifically out portable operating in the field, most of the time on the SOTA Summit, it's really quiet. Anyway, you don't have a lot of electrical noise there, so. Really, truth be told, there's not an awful lot of difference between using an older radio like the 703 or the newer radio. It comes into its own when you're struggling in a noisy environment, and that's to some degree why I'm really interested in your software-defined radio, the digital radio you're looking at. Because
I'm blown away. I'm blown away by how good the receiver is on it.
It's where I'm seeing that come into its own is probably at home in a noisy environment, which
Yes.
Probably sums up your location as well.
Yes, well, I've got a loop, so I've got 3 mag loops, so I have got a wire which just goes over the house, and then down the other side, but it's touching the roof and it's poor, FTA, I can get into China, but I occasionally get a voice contact in Europe on it. It's that bad, but it's another tool. You've got to grasp at what you can,
Well, you've done one that I haven't. I don't think I've ever worked China before.
But that was
Certainly not on
FT8. That was FT8, but still an achievement for me. I mean, if you're in a limited situation, just to get into Europe on HF from a block of flats, is as much as an achievement as someone with a mega station getting into America, isn't it? You're making contacts and you're trying and refining it and learning.
Yeah, well, I think every antenna setup is a compromise of some sort, some degree. It depends. I mean, I'm fairly lucky here. I've got a 12-meter mast out the back, which a lot of people would absolutely dream of. So that works quite nicely with the cobweb on there. And down the garden, I've just got an end-fed half wave about where it goes from the eaves of the house. So about 5.5, 6 meters above the ground. Then I've got another 6-meter mast down the end of the garden. So I've just strung it down the garden. So I guess I'm relatively lucky where I am. A lot of people don't have that, but it's good enough for chasing SOTA. I do struggle with the noise. I'm experimenting with the loop antenna at the moment. And that's Chris is showing the Hermes light radio there. It's transmitter as well, I believe, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, it's transceiver. Pardon?
Is it 5 watts? Did you say
it's
in your video?
5 watts. I'll just give the guys a brief rundown, but it's very interesting. It's called the Hermes Light 2. It's a 5-watt transceiver SDR. It's 12-bit, and it's just basically a box with a motherboard in and some filters. And on the front, you power it up, and there's an Ethernet connector, so it connects to your computer by Ethernet. And if you haven't got Ethernet on like a laptop, you can have a USB to RJ45 cable. So you plug your aerial in and you use software. And I did a video on this the other day, and I'm not going to play it. I'm just bringing up a shortcut. I'm going to mute that. And I just get this stupid advert out of the way. So I'm bringing it up in software here, and was it successful when I played the audio earlier to you guys? Was the audio that I played back successful? Was it? It
was a bit muffled, Chris, but we could
hear muffled. Yes. Well, I won't play the audio because it won't do it justice. But because that was coming through my microphone, wasn't it, Fraser? Yeah, it must have been second-hand audio. But this is the video. It's called Hermes Light 2 High-End Lower Cost SDR. So you can search for that and you'll be shocked how good the audio is. And it's $269 for the main motherboard. So it's just over £300 with the filters and stuff.
That's actually a really good price for a software-defined radio as well. When you look at a lot of the high-end stuff, you're looking over £2,000.
Exactly.
Probably over 4,000 actually.
I wanted the Sun SDR, the one that does 100 watts. Is it the Sun SDR DX? I wanted that one, but I've made my own version of it because I got some cheapo linears. I've got the Micro PA50, and I've just got a photo of that. I'm just bringing that up on the screen now. I've got the Micro PA50, and so the Micro PA50 is on the top, and underneath it, they're about £150, the Micro PA50, 50-watt HF amplifier, and the The box at the bottom is the ATU 100. That's about £80, £90 ATU. So these two boxes, along with the 705, today yesterday I got into America using this linear, this
Nice.
ATU from the car.
Well, that would be a good setup for me here, actually, because my linear down here, it takes, to get the 250, 275 watts out, I put 10 watts in. Now, if I drop that down to 5 watts, that gives me around about 150 or so watts out, which would probably be quite a nice number for this location.
Is your linear RF sensing? Because this linear, there's coax in and coax out. That's it. Obviously, it's powered up, but there's no accessory wires. It detects automatically if there's RF, if you're transmitting, and it changes band on. It says on the screen on the amp, it says 20 meters, 40. It detects the band you're on, and it's all done through, with just coax. There's no special wires required, and it's just automatic.
Okay. Yeah, the amp here I think it has got RF sensing, but the manufacturers say it should only really be relied on as a backup. You're supposed to have a PTT cable going in, but it does automatically change bands itself. It senses the RF frequency. It's if anyone's wondering in the chat, it's RM Italy BLA 350. It's the amp. They advertise it as a 350 watt, but realistically, unless you pump the absolute maximum power into it that you can, which is 15 watts, which manufacturers don't recommend, you won't get that out of it. You'll get about 250, 275 out of it at 10 watts, which is quite a nice drive level. There was a comment in the chat I was just looking for. Where's it gone? Simbo2K says, am I any relation to Thomas Nagy, the YouTube electrician? I look and sound like him. No. The username rings a bell. I think I've seen a couple of his videos, but no relation to him.
That's all right, James. Some guy asked me on my YouTube if I was Scott Manley. I don't know if anybody follows Scott Manley. He's like the sort of, I don't know if he's a NASA scientist, but he's kind of Scottish American. He does a lot of space videos, and he's got several million followers. I'd never heard of him, but obviously I looked him up. And the reason the guy thought it is I had a bit of a extreme haircut and went away up this hill one day, and then, yeah, I probably did look a little bit like him, to be honest with you. But I could do with his few more subscribers. I think it's
the voice that does it. It's the Scottish accent, I think.
Yeah.
So now you mention it, it wouldn't have occurred to me until you mentioned it, but you do sound a little bit similar.
So, James, to flip the coin then, we've had the horror stories. Have we all got some good stories to tell? When things went right, and a standout activation, if you like. I mean, for me, all activations, they're great. You're out there. It's not just about the radio for me. It's about the walking, taking the photographs, being in the outdoors. And that's my de-stress, getting outdoors, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, I don't think there's a poor activation, but has anybody got any standout ones?
I think the big success for me was our Three Nations Flora Fauna.
Great day.
I managed to, completely by accident, not planned, I arranged it at the same time. I think there was an American contest on, or field day or something at the same time. And it was just one contact after another into America. So we're absolutely boshing out the American stations. And I ended up with the mother of all pile-ups. Now, we're used to, running SOTA and Worldwide Flora Fauna. You're used to the odd slightly unruly pilot. It normally lasts sort of 15, 20 minutes and then it dries up. This one went on for just over an hour. I think it was 100 stations in slightly over an hour. It's absolutely mental, and I was absolutely shattered by the end of it. Like I say, I'm used to dealing with the pile-up. It doesn't bother me, but just that many people, one after the other, and that prolonged, I was completely burned out by the end of it.
I've seen me driving home, and I'm hoarse. I don't know how these guys can run, contest stations for 24 hours or do a D expedition for 2 weeks, because after an hour, I'm ruined.
I mean, I guess in their favour, a lot of the time they're actually in the shack, aren't they? In a comfortable shack, whereas we're either crouched in our cars in a rather awkward position with the pen and paper on our knee, or on top of a summit being blown off our feet.
I suppose I've got a quite a recent one, and some of you might have seen the video. I went up a hill in February called the Coils of Mick, which isn't too far from here. It's in the grounds of Balmoral Castle, and it was there'd been fresh snow, and it was a good forecast. But the forecast was for cloud high up, and I didn't want to go. It was really, if it had been a beautiful day, I could have gone up a high mountain. So I thought I'll pick a lower hill, 500 meters. So I'm walking up this, blue skies, I can see it all. And then the cloud just suddenly started to drop, and suddenly the high summits all around me appeared, and I'm talking like the 4,000-foot cairngorms. And I was like, oh, crap. And next minute, woof, it was right down. So I was in the cloud. So I got to the top of this summit where I'd been before, and it was freezing cold. It was, I was in the cloud, and I jammed my mast into some rocks and just put up an end-fed half wave. And I thought, right, we'll see how it goes. And I went on to 40 meters and had a cracking pile up. And I worked a maritime mobile station up in the Isle of Shetland Isles, which was a highlight. And then I went on to 20, and there was, of course, I think it was a Saturday, and I'm not often out on a Saturday because I work. And there was loads of summit stations out. And I went on to 15, and I worked a couple of Greek. There must have been an event going on in Greece because there was Greek summits came in. And I thought, God, I'll just keep working up the bands. So I went up to 10, and I'm on the end-fed half wave with the KX2. It's only, I think it only puts out 8 watts on 10 meters. And obviously the 49 to 1's a bit lossy. I've got 5 meters of skinny coax in there, even more loss. Next minute, this Canadian guy comes through, and I mean, it was like he was in the same room, and he thought I was in the same room. He couldn't believe I was running 8 watts in an end-fed half wave, and we had a proper rag chew. And it was just one of these days that, I didn't expect anything from it, and I had an amazing time on every band from 40 right through. And then I took out, I tell you, I don't know how I didn't get hypothermia, because I bought this QRP Labs QDX, and I took that out and I just fired it up on 20 with the same antenna, and it's only a little 5-watt thing. It works on pretty much it'll work on any mode on the WSJTX software suite. And again, I was crossed the Atlantic with just 5 watts on FT8, and I was just about to give up and go. And I had my 2-meter handheld, which I always carry but hardly ever use. And I noticed that Richard M1 Hat HAX, who's quite a well-known SOTA operator down south, he was on one of the big high Cairngorm summits. And I turned my handheld on, heard him talking, and I had a summit to summit with him. And I was walking back down thinking, God, it doesn't really get any better than that. And by the time I'd gone down the cloud, I'd lift as well, so I got a view. But no, it was just an amazing couple of hours on a little hill, and fun on every band. So it kind of it makes up for all the crappy days when you have one like that.
I was just looking in the comments. They were asking about Thomas Nagy's channel. Simbo2K said he tried to put a link in there, but it wouldn't let him because. It won't let you post a link unless you're a moderator, I'm afraid. But I've just posted that link in, so if anyone does want to check out that channel, we'll send him a bit of free publicity.
Yay!
And what about Chris, Digital Analog Ham? You got any good stories where things have gone much better for you than planned? Good activations, or you do a lot of operating mobile, don't you?
It is mobile, and one of my most memorable days in ham radio was a month or two ago. Jimbo in the comments, he's in the same town as me, and I picked him up in the car. I was telling him all about he was following the YouTube and seeing all the 10-meter activity, and he can't pick it up at his house, in the town. But I took him up to the high spot where I go, and it was just on a random day. I hadn't looked at the SFI or anything. I was just he'd not been out mobile for years, so I thought I'd show him. So I'm just bringing something up on my other monitor. So the one on the left. So I did this video. It's called "I Heard American Police in the UK." It was on 33 megs. I heard American police and fire battalions, and Jimbo saw this and loved it, and I just picked him up in the car on a random day, and we went through all these frequencies, 33 megs FM, and sure enough, the American police were booming through. So I picked up Jimbo on a random day, and it was there again. And before this, I'd not heard them for 35 years, because I remembered when I was just starting out, you know, if you look back, you know, to the like TJ Hooker and the old Police series, if you think about it, they all had a huge whip, like a CB aerial on the car. They had Midlands in the cars, and that's, you know, like the CBs with the grey mics. That's because they're on just over HF. They're on 31, 32 megs. So I picked up Jimbo. We went out in the car. We heard loads of American police on 33, 32 megs. Then we went down to 10 meters, and we had tens and tens of contacts on 10-meter sideband into America and Canada, Brazil. And then we went on to FM, and we were listening to the New York repeater, of course, and we were listening to the Russian repeater. There's a Russian repeater. I think it's RUAXE, EEC, something like that. And funnily enough, this Russian repeater on FM on 10 meters, it had an American accent. You know, the ID that it reads out, because it's All Star. You know, it had an American accent, so it was quite amusing. And Jimbo was in all his years of radio, he'd never seen anything like it, you know, and he was quite taken aback. And I was really proud to be able to show him something so cool.
It's always nice when you can show something unexpected as well, and perhaps maybe just prove a few people wrong. I don't know if anyone remembers I did one video called "Life's Too Short for QRP." That was on Shining Tour as well. So I went up to Shining Tour, did 2 meters on a 40-year-old radio. It was an old Yaesu FT290, 2.5 watts on internal batteries, and I think I'd seen a couple of videos before that where on YouTube people had been moaning about, we only do QRO, you know, life's too short for QRP. I thought, right, I'll show them. So I went up with this 2.5 watt radio, 2 meters, and I had this massive pile up on 2 meters. And we all know what happens when more than one person keys up on FM, don't we? And it was an absolute nightmare trying to pick stations out. And I think it happened just as some of my viewers were on the air as well, because I had I think it was about 5 or 6 people came up and said, "Oh, we like your video." So I think I've got quite a few viewers live around that area as well. So that was a success. I put that video up, and of course, as soon as you do anything like that, it's going to attract a bit of controversy in the comments. So people were saying, "Yeah, but you did that as part of a SOTA program." People were looking at you. Well, yeah, is that not kind of the point? Maybe, you know. And then there was the comment of, "Yeah, but 2 meters is line of sight, so it doesn't matter how much power you're running." True to some degree, I guess. And other people were saying, well, if you did that, you wouldn't do that on HF. So 6 months later, I went back with the ICOM 703, 10 watt radio, but I set it down to 2 watts and did a similar thing on HF on 20 and 40. So moral of the story, you really don't need a lot of power.
No.
It's surprising what you can do.
I think Dave, our friend Dave EI5IMB, is obviously starting to realise now that you don't need to lug a suitcase with a battery and a big radio up a hill. And, you know, Chris will know as well as me, if you've got a KX2 with an internal battery, because it's lithium-ion batteries, eventually the battery voltage will drop. And it doesn't drop straight away like everyone says. You know, you can run it at 10 watts for a good while, but eventually it drops to 5. And I've seen it drop to 5 halfway through an activation. And I could plug the spare battery in externally and it would bring it back up again. But we don't bother because the signal reports don't change. You know, if it's on 40 meters and you're working in inter-G, nobody notices.
Well, you saw I put a short out recently saying how much power or how much difference does a linear ramp make.
I saw that. That was a good
saw
one.
that. Yeah, and I called into a web SDR. It's Hat Green. It's just over 100 miles as the crow flies. I think it's about 105 miles from me. Was it? I can't remember if it was on 40 or 80 meters, but I called into it on 10 watts. And granted, it was still, I was a fairly strong signal into it, even on 10 watts. It was about S7 to S8. Brought the linear amp in, took it up to about 250-ish, 275 watts, somewhere in that region. And I went up by about 2 S points, which, if you look at the actual dB rating on the screen, it's actually 10 dB. Now, I think it's 6 dB per S point, is it, on most meters?
That's right.
It's slightly under 2 S points. My signal went up.
Yeah.
That's going from 10 watts to 250 watts. So I increased my power 25 times, and that's the difference it made.
Here's a good question on the chat. Steve M1 SDH, what piece of non-obvious equipment do you think is essential for portable operation? Obviously excluding radio, antenna, coax, etc.
Flask of tea.
Flask of tea, Chris, it's obvious. For me, it's a Sorin malt loaf.
I think it depends.
First aid kit. A first aid kit's very important.
Yeah. Well, navigation. Make sure you got good navigation. You know where you're going, especially on some of the bigger summits. The one I always take with me is, and it again, if you're going on summits where you're going to struggle with phone signal, is I've got one of these satellite communicators, which is always handy. I'm not actually going to press it, but there's an SOS button on there as well. So if you do get yourself in trouble, it's two-way messaging. So it goes through your phone, and you can actually tell them what the problem is, and you can send SMS messages. So I use that for spotting, mainly via the SOTA SMS messenger. So that's perhaps the non-obvious kit that I like to take with me on most of it, especially the bigger ones where I know I'm going to struggle with the mobile phone signal.
It's funny you say that. The mobile phone signal is so good these days. I was in one of the most remote summits in the centre of Scotland. It's probably one of the ones that's furthest away from the road. And I got there at 9 o'clock at night because I was on an overnight hike. And I knew I wasn't going to get a 4G signal up there. So I've got a Garmin GPS that does the same thing that yours does, James. It's an inReach, so it uses the Iridium satellite. So you can send text messages and spot. And I never needed to use it. And I got to the top of the summit and I took my phone out and I was, oh my God, there's a bit of a signal here. And if I actually stood on the summit cairn with my phone like that, I had enough 4G to send a spot and to send to send normal kind of WhatsApp messages and stuff. And I couldn't believe it. It was the one place I thought it just wouldn't work, and it did. So things are getting better on the 4G side of things.
It's still pretty bad if you go up to last time I went up to the Lake District was, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago now. Yeah, Lake District is really bad.
Oh, even on the summits?
Yeah.
Oh,
just going back to the good days, James, what's a standout day? If people have a look at my YouTube channel, the banner at the top, there's a photograph. Chris might be able to get it up. Bless him, he's got the technology there to do it. The photograph on the banner that I use at the top of my YouTube channel, the homepage. This was December 2006. We'd done a summit previous in the day. We did one called Horsehead Moor, which is it's been taken off, got replaced by Burke's Fell, I believe. And we did the summit of Fountains Fell, which is where that photograph is taken from. I was doing 2 meters. I was using the FT817 with the internal battery, so 2.5 watts. I used a 5-element Yagi. I think it was a Diamond A144S. I think it was 5-element Yagi. The log's on SOTA. You can all have a look at it. I think 30 odd contacts, but this is on 2 meter FM and SSB running 2.5 watts. I had 6 into France, 7 into Germany, and a couple into Belgium. Right, massive tropo lift. Right. Now, when we got up there, my friend and I, we were sat in mist. We couldn't barely see a thing. It's a summit I've done many times, so I knew my way around. and the sun came out, and I says, it's going to burn this off. And that's what happened, that massive cloud inversion. I just stopped the radio, put the microphone down, and took loads of photographs. The hills you're looking at is the Three Peaks of Yorkshire. So from left to right, you've got Ingleborough. The one in the middle is Pennygent. And the one on the right side of Pennygent in the background, that's Whernside. So that's the only time, I think I've done 100 odd activations. That's the only time I've been in witnessed a cloud inversion.
What did you want bringing up on the screen, Chris? Sorry to interrupt. What did you want bringing up on the screen?
The photograph at the top, the one with the mountains.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't do it justice, to be fair. You know.
Yeah.
You had to really witness it with your eyes. It looked just like candy floss.
Looks good.
Absolutely fabulous day, that. Plenty of contacts on radio, and just the photographs, amazing.
One of the other things I would say that is essential, something to take with you. Where I live, I'm quite remote, but I like activating summits on 2 meters because 40 meters is easy. You put a spot on, you get a pile up. 2 meters is a much bigger challenge where I live, and I found that out when I had the other end of the stick when I did a day in Manchester, and I went and did what was the hill I went up near?
Was that Kinder Scout?
Kinder Scout, yeah. And I worked 30 stations in 20 minutes on 2 meters.
Yeah,
and
that's a good summit, that one.
It is a good summit. So up here I try and do some really remote summits on 2, and the thing I have is a list of contacts, a Twitter account, a WhatsApp group, and normally I can drum up enough people by doing some social media posting, and you want to see the difference it makes once people are actually looking out for you. And people sit in their shacks and they've always got 2 meter radios, no matter where they live, and you actually find that in rural areas they never use them, so they're actually delighted to make a contact on 2 meters half the time. But it's almost about who you know, and it's taken me a couple of years to build up a sort of network of people. And I was on a hill a couple of weeks ago just with my handheld and one of these RH770 things, and one of the guys had seen my Twitter post. He lived in Orkney, and he came on. So he was up in the island of Orkney, which is probably 120 miles north. I mean, the good thing is it was a good path over the sea, but the fact was he was there and looking for me, had his radio turned on.
Yeah, well, 4 meters is a band I'd like to try as well. I did try it once, and I think part of the problem was the radio wasn't set up properly. It was I didn't get much audio gain on it, so it was really quiet. People couldn't hear me, so I want to give that another go. That was up in the Pennines, because that's a band I think could draw a bit of interest that people don't get to use that band very often, and I think people would like to make contacts on that band.
But I think you'd have to do some pre-publicity with that, James, to drum up some audio.
Probably, yeah. Well,
sure.
But yeah, just post something on the reflector, on the social reflector.
And I think if you did that, you would get the contacts, because it's something different, and people would look, I'll dig out my 4 meter set, or I'll go and rig up a quick dipole or something like that. And it's something that you can make an aerial in 10 minutes for that, and you might get a few contacts.
Driver Film Shortwave says essential item if you're in Yorkshire is a flat cap, and he says he's done 2 SOTA activations without spotting. Always get loads of stations on 2 meters. Again, it depends what part of the country you're in. If you're up in the Pennines and the Lake District, I don't bother spotting if I'm running 2 meters, and you can usually get a pile up on 2 meters in that part of the region. And yeah, Fraser says I often have 0 on 2 meters. Again, it depends. If I did 2 meters down here where I am, it would be an absolute nightmare. I've tried it and given up on it. I just do HF now most of the time. So, the other thing to watch.
We were having a conversation with someone was asking me just earlier today about 2 meters up here, and I said it's not so much. I mean, part of the problem is there's less people in northern Scotland or northeast Scotland, but because it's so hilly, you think that would be good. But everybody lives in a valley, or a glen. Nobody lives on the top of the hills. So unless they happen to be living in the valley, beneath you, if they're in the valley that's sort of 2 valleys over, then they're not going to get your signal, and that's what the challenge is.
Well, I think the other thing is we were talking earlier about 40 meters and 20 meters versus 2 meters. I think the thing is everyone's so used to there being a lot of activity on 40 metres, 20 metres. So they set themselves up for HF, but they rarely ever hear anything on 2 metres. So they give up on it. And like I have, I've taken my antenna down for 2 metres. So
Yeah, I don't have a 2-metre antenna up at home.
I think in some ways it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the English SOTA chasers, Vicky M6BWA, she only does 2 metres and 70 sems. That's all she does. And she's managed to get a mountain goat with it. Her and her husband are up here on holiday this week. And they emailed me before they came up and said, can you do anything to help us? So there's a local sort of Northeast Scotland email group. There's Twitter. There's Facebook pages for some of the radio clubs. So I've been like their PR officer all week. And they've been getting loads of contacts. And there's people been digging out the 70 SEM stuff. People have got 70 SEMs and never used it, but they've been making contacts with Vicky on the summit. But because I don't have 2 metres at home, I've been having to go out in the Land Rover and just use the mobile set. And I was working her on 70 SEMs the other day, and I could barely hear her. And she's about 30 miles away. And I just drove the Land Rover forward 1 metre, and she came up to 5 and 5.
I've had a handheld with her on a summit. I was activating. I can't remember which summit it was. I was on one of the summits in Wales on 2 metres, and she said, "Oh, can you do 70 sems?" And I only had a monoband antenna up, so I quickly unscrewed the antenna and just put the standard whip on, and we had a summit to summit on 70 sems. So the bands do work well when people are on them, and that's the problem half the time. People just aren't using them. Yeah,
well, these 2 metre 145 Alive events that Tim's been organised have been great. I mean, the last one there was a lot more people out doing portable because the weather was a bit milder up my way, and it was really good fun. But I
missed that one, unfortunately. I had to work. Gutted.
Yeah, we just need to keep doing it, keep promoting it, and hopefully the activity will grow with that.
But it'd be nice to see him maybe do another band as well. Maybe 6 metres FM could be an interesting experiment to do that on as well.
Yeah.
What other failures have we had? I'll tell you, probably the most dangerous one I've ever had as a kind of like a precautionary tale, if you like. I was on a summit, I can't remember if it was Lake District or the Pennines, but I was on 2 metres, had my aerial up. It was in the very early days, and I suddenly just heard this like popping sound in the audio on the radio. Sort of every 3 or 4 seconds was just like a click, and I thought, oh, that's not good. And I hadn't checked the weather reports. I looked up, and the sky was turning very, very dark. I thought, this isn't good. So I turned the radio off, unplugged it, and the clicking sound continued. I thought, that's coming from the mast. Jesus. So I had a bit of a panic at that point. I literally just pulled the peg out of the ground and let the mast fall over on its side and collapsed it all down quick, and grabbed all my stuff, ran down the hill, and I just looked round behind me, and there was this big flash and an almighty bang. And normally if you get lightning, there's like a few seconds between seeing the lightning and hearing the rumble. Well, it wasn't a rumble, it was just a bang. And this big flash, and it was instant. I don't know if it actually hit the hill on which I was on about 10 minutes ago, but I just thought, Jesus,
so it was right on top of you.
Yeah, so I thought, Jesus, that was probably the most dangerous, stupid, and idiotic thing I've ever done. And I tell that story not for bragging rights, but just kind of as a precautionary tale. Really, we talk a lot about SOTA, but the weather does play a factor. So. I was lucky I got away with it, but not recommended.
I was reading recently from I think it was a SOTA activator that wrote it. They were down on a summit in Wales in the winter, and there was a lot of hill walkers about that. And because it was winter, folk had ice axes and stuff on their packs. And there was a bit of a hailstorm came through. It wasn't lightning, but the hail was being electrically charged, and everything started sizzling, and people's ice axes started vibrating on the back of their rucksacks. And the guy that was doing SOTA, he got his kit down pretty quick and bailed. He said that people were terrified by it. It was just this electrically charged hail, which I've never heard of.
Anyone else got any good story? I'll tell you the one thing we haven't talked, and I don't want to get too political on this, but anyone had any good comments from idiots in the comments section from trolls? Any good one? Like I had one a while ago. It was a video I put together as a bit of a joke. I used a ladder down at the field. I had the main mast down for repairs, so I just stood the ladder up in the middle of a radial field, and it's a big radial field. The radial's about 15 metres long. There's about 40 of them, so it's a damn good ground. And I was talking to some guy in America, and I kind of made a bit of a joke at the beginning of the video. I said, "Oh, so what if you just happened to break down in the middle of a field? You know, how would you call for help? You know, it was a friendly and gentle pop at the prepper community. It was nothing malicious. It was it was just having a little bit of fun. And anyway, that video went up. I didn't think much of it, and it was sort of probably a good 6 months after that video went up. I got a extremely snotty email came through, and I was reading it. It was about 2 or 3 A4 pages long. And I think the last line of it said, well, you'll be coming to us when we all go to hell in the golf cart. And his autocorrect's obviously done a bit of a number on him. I think he meant to say, we'll all go to hell in a handcart. But so I actually put a video in response to that. I don't know if anyone remembers it. It was quite a while ago. Basically, about 2-3 minutes long, me going through his complaint, tearing him apart, and the final line was, so we'll all go to hell at a leisurely pace of about 15 miles an hour in a golf cart or something like that. So I had a bit of a dig at him. And anyone else had any stupid comments in the?
I find that the 99.9% of comments are really, really supportive, and
definitely
questions as well. And you know what? Some people ask really what some people might say is a dumbass question, because this is a sort of hobby where you're kind of self-learning and you're kind of supposed to try and educate yourself as you go. But I think it's so easy on the internet now just to ask the obvious question rather than go and find it for yourself. So if someone asks a question, I'll always give them a decent answer or point them out to some stuff. But I've had a couple of stupid comments recently. There was a guy slagged me off for running my 2 meter setup with the squelch open, and it was what kind of dumbass runs 2 meters FM with the squelch open. And clearly anybody that's worked portable with 2 meters, it's amazing when you open the squelch how many weak signals will come in. So there's a few folk jumped to my defence, and there was just one the other week that James, you might have jumped in on it. Some guy said I had some sort of annoying clip with my voice, which I've not been aware of until now.
Yeah, I had a bit of a dig at him for that, actually, didn't I, in your
you might have
comments.
said how much you paid for this content.
That was quite funny. He went very quiet after that. I don't think he actually responded to that, did he?
No.
There's one in my comments said, why use ham radio when you have a mobile phone? And I tried to give him a sensible response to start with, and then he kind of twisted it a bit to say, oh, well, you say that ham's invented everything. I thought, I can't be doing with it. And so, again, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and give him a sensible answer, and he just got more and more argumentative. So I think that's the only time, the one and only time I've ever actually kicked anyone out of the comments on my video. I don't think I've ever kicked anybody out of the comments apart from him. But in the end, I did. I used it as material for a YouTube short. I put into that AI, the GPT-3 chat. I put, why use ham radio instead of a mobile phone? And the response to that was quite funny. So some of these silly comments that people use can actually give you quite good material for a video. Somebody puts something in there and I think, that's actually a really good idea. Right, so
I've been told to take an antenna down once doing a solar activation, and I was on Whernside, which is one of the 3 peaks, and it was just the multifunction dipole. I was nowhere near the trig point, because I never set up near trig point, because the mountains are for everybody and people like to have the lunch and take photos and do whatever they do. I don't want to pester them. I don't want them pestering me. So I set up away from the trig point, and I put the 2 meter antenna on a fence post. And some guy in a high-vis jacket came along and told me to take it down. He says, "What do you think you're doing?" I says, I'm just doing radio. It's not permanent." He says, "Well, take it down." And I says, I tried to reason with him. I said, "I'll take it down when I've finished. I'm not going to be long. I'm not doing any harm. It's not permanent, like I say." And he got more and more and more and more aggressive. I couldn't reason to him, to the point where I threatened to throw him off the mountain. And he disappeared off with his tail between his legs. But that's the only time I've been asked to take an antenna down.
I think the problem is a lot of the time, for the majority of the public, and I include wardens in that, amateur radio is something they don't normally come across. It's something they don't know about, so it's all a bit of a mystery to them. So it's that natural human reaction, isn't it? When you don't know what you're dealing with, no, we need to stop that, because you don't know what it is. I've only had
people see a sort of 7-10 meter mast up, they can't understand that it's kind of came out your rucksack and it's only a temporary installation as well. So I've had that before, and somebody's wandered up on a quiet summit and they've said, "What are you doing on amateur radio?" And they're all right, and they went, "What is that thing permanent?" I'm like, no, I'll take it down with me. And they just look at you like, how's he getting down the hill with that 7 meter pole?
Come say hello.
It's completely alien to them, isn't it? The common reaction is, "Oh, is that like CB?" Is the usual reaction. You think
it is, I'm afraid.
You think, "Oh, careful." Some people get really touchy about that. I mean, I don't care. I guess, as you say, Chris, it is like radio.
CB.
And actually, I tried to. I spoke to someone who runs a CB channel on YouTube. I was going to try and get him on here and talk about the differences between CB and amateur radio. He went very quiet on me, so I don't know what happened there. But yeah, I was going to try and do CB versus amateur in a good light. What are the differences, similarities? Try and get that a bit of understanding there. So I think that might be a good live stream to do at some point.
My most recent mess up was I went out on Wednesday morning. I had a meeting in Aviemore, and I thought, I'll take on a summit I've not been up before. And it was one of these. It wasn't a high hill, but it was just, it was horrible. It was tussocks of grass and heather all the way up. And there was this very fine drizzle kind of passing through every 10 minutes. And I thought, I'll be all right. I did a few contacts on 2 meters, had my HF set up, and I got going on 40. And I got to the stage that, you make your first 2 contacts and then boom, the pile up comes in. And I worked, I think, 1 station or 2 stations out the pile up, and then the heavens just absolutely opened. And I was sort of 5 meters away from my rucksack, so I didn't have anything to pull over the radio. And I just said, "Rain, QRT, bye," boom, and hit the off buttons on the radio like that. And I felt so bad because I've never done that in my life before. But I mean, it was just, and I wasn't even wearing a waterproof jacket. I'd had my down jacket on because it was breezy. So by the time I'd put the radio away, I was absolutely soaked through and had a miserable trudge all the way back down the hill.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to just pull the plug, though, even on safety ground. I've done that twice in my in all of my social activations. The first one was, like I told you, with the lightning, when I had that clicking sound with the mast. That I still had a pile up there. I pulled the plug on that quite reasonably, I think. And the second one was... actually, there's a video on it, the extreme test of the Xiegu 5105. The winds were really strong on that. There's just a video clip of me laying on the floor to try and keep out the wind with the mic there going, "I'm sorry, guys, this is getting dangerous. I've got to pull the plugs." So I think that was only the second time I've ever left a pile up hanging. But apart from that, my philosophy is I try and keep going till I've worked all of the chasers. I don't like leaving chasers hanging because they make it interesting for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, spot on.
And Steve in the comments says, "What's your usual explanation for those asking what are you doing when in a public place?" This might be an interesting one for Chris UKH, actually, because you quite often operate from the car in public car parks. So do many people see aerials on your car and ask you?
Well, if you can't see a 17-foot telescopic on the car, then there's something wrong. But yes, I have had the 17.5-foot telescopic on a mag mount on my car, and it amazes me the amount of stupid people that are still parked next to you. I wouldn't I'm trying to be safe. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and someone comes and parks up next to your 17-foot aerial on your roof. But I normally say They say, "What are you doing?" I'll say, "I'm a radio operator. I'm playing radio." I don't say ham radio. I don't always say ham radio. I judge it on the sort of person it is. But I just say I'm a radio operator, and they say, "Where are you listening to?" And I'll say, and I'll turn the volume up, and I say I'm listening to France or America or Brazil or something, and they'll have a listen, and get there. And I don't go into detail as in what I'm on, but I just find it that they understand it better if you just say you're a radio operator. You're listening and talking to people.
Well, it comes back to what we were saying earlier about, for most people, it's a complete mystery, isn't it, what amateur radio is?
It is.
They just haven't seen it before. So you say about people parking next to you, it probably doesn't even occur to them, the safety aspects of it.
No.
But there was one of your, I think it was your live stream, Chris, you had, didn't one of your viewers just turn up out of the blue next to you or something? I think it was quite a while ago.
I was on Dunstable Downs live streaming, and someone pulled up next to me that was watching the live stream, and they were going to go home and get us all bacon sandwiches.
Oh, nice!
Yeah.
Good evening from Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
I've seen Natalie in one of the videos.
Your videos?
One or two.
Yeah, she quite often appears in your videos, doesn't she, Chris?
When I'm allowed.
She's allowed.
James, we were on holiday in Anglesey, and we worked on Pendle Hill.
We worked, didn't we? We
Summit to
spoke,
summit, yeah. That was a nice cute 5'9" both ways.
Yes, it's very nice when you work someone that you know.
Say again, Chris.
Yeah, it's very nice when you work someone that you know. Like I've got James on Ham Alert. Does anyone use Ham Alert? And whenever James is on a SOTA summit, it comes up on my phone and says the frequency he's on. And some of these times it corresponds with the time that I'm playing radio, and therefore I'll give him a call. Ham Alert, look it up. It's brilliant.
I heard of that.
Yeah, it collects data from all sorts of things, like FT8, SOTA, people watch it, chasing summits, parks on the air, everything. And as soon as James keys up and he's on the SOTA system, it comes up on the screen and it says the frequency.
I'll tell you the one thing we should do that could be a good experiment to try, because I've got an ICOM 705. Chris RSF, you've got an 705. I think UKH, you've got one as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Still. So what I'd really love to try one day maybe is if we can all go out and get a D-Star contact on HF, see if we can work 40 metres D-Star.
Well, every Saturday that happens anyway. I don't know if you know, there is a D-Star net on HF.
I didn't know that, no.
Every Saturday on Reflector 1 Charlie. It's called the Worldwide HF net. And it's about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Might be Sunday, but it's Saturday or Sunday. And they go around all the different bands. They go around. You see, Reflector 1 Charlie is, 30 Charlie is a place where everyone meets. It's a place where others link to. Bit like the centre of a wheel, the spokes, everyone's linking to this. And the main controller, the net controller, he says, right, we'll try 40 metres, and then he reads out the frequency and everyone goes on there. And it's HF, but it is digital, it's D-Star. And people call him from all around the world. Then he comes back to the main reflector and says, right, we had 3 contacts. He reads out the call signs. Then he says, we'll try 17 metres, 15, 12, 10. And depending on the conditions, they get worldwide contacts.
Just looking at the comments on the apps. Hamlet, I've heard of it. I've never actually looked it up or used it, so that's one I'll have to look at. What's the one I use? Hang on. On my phone, I use. I've got an app called Sota Spotter, and also Sota Mate is another good one. Spelled Sota MAT without the E on the end. That's another good one as well. What that does is you have to set it up online first, but you can actually hold your phone up to the mic on your radio on the FT8 frequencies, and it puts out an FT8 tone. It goes
Brilliant.
via the PSK reporter network and actually puts a spot on the SOTA website, so you can do it even without a mobile phone signal. So that's a really good app to use. Jeff says it has several ways to trigger an alert. Yep, like I say, several ways to trigger an alert. FT8 from your phone. If you're a CW reporter, you can do it with CW. Satellite, if you've got more money than sense.
You certainly know when you've been spotted, don't you?
Yeah.
You're
usually
working 1 or 2 stations.
the spot comes up, and about 30 seconds later, it's a mass pile up. Usually, hopefully, that's kind of the plan. Okay. Well, look, guys, we've been going good hour and a half now, so I think that's a good session. I think we've covered most things. So, should we just quickly go around the table? What people got planned coming up? Any highlights on their channel? We'll just quickly go around the table, then we'll say 7 threes and call it a night. So, Chris, UKH, you're doing more with your digital radio, are you? The SDR.
I've got several projects on the go. My main interest is I'm quite enjoying. It's when you've done ham radio, for many years, it's very rare you find something you haven't done. When and with me, it's this linear amplifier I find quite interesting. I'm powering it in the car with a LifePo 4 battery. So I'm interested to see how long it lasts. It's only 50 watts, and powering it and possibly making a portable setup using the ICOM 705, the ATU 100, and the Mini PA 50, and also the SDR, the Hermes Lite. Experimenting with that, because you're pressing the transmit button with your mouse button. On a Windows computer or Linux, you're clicking transmit. And to do that while you're tuning a mag loop, is quite a skill. When you've got a physical microphone, you can press a button, and that's a given thing. But doing it with a mouse, transmitting, and then it's quite an art, and I haven't got it yet.
You'll get there. Steve says looking forward to doing his first SOTA activation, and he's done a bit of chasing, but will be interesting to see the other side of the pilot. Steve, I think you'll enjoy that, Steve. It's quite an experience when you've got about 30 odd people trying to call you, or well, probably nearer 20 people trying to call you. It's a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it. Just be ready. The one thing I will say is most SOTA chasers are quite patient. They'll forgive a few mistakes, so don't get too hung up on it. Don't panic too much. You'll do fine. And with that, round to you, Chris. What have you got coming up on your channel?
Yeah, good point there, James. The SOTA chasers, they're mainly clued up out there, and they want the points, so they're patient, and they'll help you along the way. So they get the points. Got the holiday coming up. I'm hoping to be out the bank holiday weekend. And then not long after that is when we go away, which is when I do most of my activating. Weather permitting, we'll be doing something each day for 4 or 5 days. Obviously, weather permitting. So more HF stuff for the KX2. Still do VHF, of course. So looking forward to that.
Good stuff. And Fraser, plans for your channel?
Probably about 3 weeks ago now, I went over to the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, and I managed to activate three really remote summits that had never been activated before over on the west coast of Lewis, and they were really, really
that was
wild
good,
country. Yeah, really, really rugged. And so I did a video of it, and I've just edited it now, and it's sitting on YouTube at the minute. But it'll be, I think I'm releasing it next Sunday evening. So it's a bit longer than normal. I think it's about 18 minutes long, but I kind of thought it needed to be that length to do it justice. So it was good fun. There's not many unactivated summits left in the UK. I think there's only maybe 2 now on the Scottish mainland. And the ones that are out on the islands are actually all sea stacks that need rock climbing skills and very expensive boat charters and stuff to get to. So if you want an unactivated summit in the UK, you're going to have to move fast.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, I think for me, I actually caused a bit of a stir. I did a SOTA activation with a kite antenna, and I used DX50, which is from Callum DX Commander up north, and he actually saw the video and said, would you want to come on my channel? So I went on there a couple of nights ago, earlier this week. I actually joined him for a live stream. It's done quite a number on my channel, actually. My viewers kind of shot up by about 30 in the last week, so it's a good publicity number.
Yeah, that was good. That was interesting.
But,
I never saw that, James. I'll have to look at that. So well done for that.
That was really good fun, that. It was nice to get a bit of a chat in with the big man himself, and in terms of other projects, I'm still working on the QO100 satellite. That's been on hold for a bit. I just haven't got around to doing anything. I think, Fraser, you said you were working on that as well, so that might be one to try.
I've got a dish on the side of this Bothy, and every time I look at it, I think I must do something with that because it isn't actually connected to anything. I've got no further forward with it.
Well, I've got mine working, but it's the frequency's a bit stable, so my voice keeps going up and down in pitch. So it's not got a GPS connection on it at the moment. So I need to get one of these GPS disciplined oscillators to tame it down a bit. But other than that, it's the signal's down a little bit, but it's still workable. So that's one project I've got going on. The other project, I've got a loop antenna I've just put up there. I'm waiting for a switch to switch it over when you key up on the mic, because I'm struggling with noise here at this location. So I'm hoping putting that loops up is going to be a bit better. Initial tests look good, so I'll probably, once I get all that sorted, I might even send the drone up, get some aerial photos of the house, and do a video on getting from I've got from 6 meters down to 80 meters here in the mid terrace house. So I think that might be a good video to add up as well. So a sneak peek for my channel. And there you go. As we're talking, top left of the screen, Chris has brought up the video or the live stream I did with the DX Commander. So with that, just a quick look down the comments, anything we've missed. We've got Driver Film Shortwave is hoping to try a kite antenna activation this year. He blames me for that one. That was my fault. And Chris Moore says, come to the shack to see what the pole up is like. I think it means pile up. Okay, with that, like I say, we've been going a good hour and a half, so I think we'll call it a day there. Wish everyone 7-3s. Big thank you to Chris and Fraser for joining me tonight. And we'll have to come up with a subject for the next one next month or so's time.
And another activity day, if we can organise it.
Absolutely. We were talking about doing a HEMA, weren't we? Three Nations HEMA.
Yeah, we'll have to get our heads together.
Well,
I'm up for that, Chris. I've worked out there's one about 300 yards from my house, so
really,
really close. I just got a trig point on it. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll definitely want to do that.
So the Worked All Britain guys will go berserk for that. So we want the trig point. Yeah, we'll get our heads together in his little group. We'll arrange something. Thanks for having us, James. It's been fun as always.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my plans are a little bit up in the air at the moment. I'm between jobs. As of yesterday, I was officially unemployed. I start the new job on the 22nd, which is next week, and I don't know what my shift patterns or working patterns are going to be yet. So give me a couple of weeks to get my feet under the desk, and then we'll figure that one out. So we'll definitely do that, though. I think that's going to be a really good one.
Excellent.
Drive Film Shortwave says he'd be up for some HEMA stuff as well.
Yeah,
okay,
that's Dom. That's Dom, good lad.
Dom, was it?
Driver Shortwave, it's Dom. Is it 2E0? It were M6K. I forgot his call sign.
He's not local Swindon, is he? Not local Swindon?
Maybe.
No.
But possibly. I'm not 100% sure where his own QTH is.
Because I know there's a Dom local club I've spoken to quite a few times. I was wondering if it was the same guy.
But yes,
anyway,
we shall liaise, get something organised.
Absolutely, we'll sort it out. Okay, thanks again for joining me, Chris, Fraser. Thank you very much, and to all of our viewers as well. Thank you for watching. Big 7-3s, and catch you all on the next one. Good night, all.
Good night.